The dust swirled like golden specks in the afternoon sunlight as Victoria Vaughn clutched her worn leather suitcase, standing on the train platform of Silver Creek, Arizona Territory, 1885. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she scanned the station for the man who was supposed to meet her, the man whose advertisement she had answered 3 months ago with trembling hands and desperate hope. No one came forward to claim her. Victoria smoothed her navy traveling dress, the nicest one she owned, though the hem was frayed and the bodice had been taken in twice to fit her diminishing frame. The journey west had been longer and costlier than she had anticipated. After her parents' deaths from influenza back in Boston, the debts had mounted, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and a desperate advertisement in the matrimonial news as her salvation. "Miss, you'll have to clear the platform. Train's moving on," the conductor called, tipping his hat as he walked past. "Please, sir," Victoria said, her voice barely audible above the hiss of the steam engine. "I was to be met by a Mr. James Arlington." "Do you know of him?" The conductor's expression shifted, a shadow crossing his weathered face. "Arlington? Madam, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but James Arlington was killed in a mining accident 3 weeks ago. Cave-in at the Silver Dollar Mine." The ground seemed to tilt beneath Victoria's feet. "But I'm to be his bride. He sent for me." "I'm sorry, miss. Times are hard out here. Folks die." The conductor shook his head. "You got return fare?" Victoria's silence was answer enough. "Best see Sheriff Miller then. He might know what to do with you." The conductor pointed to a whitewashed building down the dusty main street before climbing back aboard the train. With leaden feet, Victoria made her way to the sheriff's office, each step punctuated by the terrible realization that she was alone, penniless, and 1,000 miles from anything familiar. The sheriff, a graying man with kind eyes that belied his stern demeanor, listened to her story with a grim expression. "Miss Vaughn, I wish I had better news for you. Arlington didn't leave much behind. Creditors took most of it." Sheriff Miller twisted his hat in his hands. "And I'm afraid we don't have much charity to spare in Silver Creek. Times are lean." "What am I to do?" Victoria whispered, fighting back tears. The sheriff cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, there's the auction tomorrow." "Auction?" "For folks who can't pay their fare or debts. It's a contract for service. Labor. You work to pay off what you owe, and then you're free to do as you please." Victoria's stomach clenched. "You mean indentured servitude?" "Only temporary until the debt's paid. It's either that or—" The sheriff let his words trail off, but the implication was clear. There were other ways for a woman alone to earn her keep in a frontier town, none of them respectable. "I understand," Victoria said, though her voice shook. "How does it work?" "Be at the town square at noon tomorrow. Bring your things." The sheriff nodded toward the door. "You can spend the night in the cell here. It's clean, and safer than the alternatives." That night, lying on the thin mattress in the jail cell, Victoria stared at the ceiling, wondering how her dreams of a new beginning had led her here. She had imagined marriage to a stranger would be difficult, but she had not imagined this being auctioned off like cattle to pay a debt she hadn't even known existed. The next morning, Victoria washed her face in a basin of cold water, pinned her honey-blonde hair into a neat bun, and donned her gray day dress, worn but respectable. Sheriff Miller escorted her to the town square, where a crowd had already gathered. A wooden platform had been erected, and several bedraggled individuals stood in a line, waiting their turn. "Folks," called a thin man with a waxed mustache. "Next up we have passage fare owed to the Western Rail Company. Miss Victoria Vaughn, newly arrived from Boston, educated, can read and write, experienced in household management." Victoria stood frozen as dozens of eyes raked over her. The crowd consisted mostly of men, miners, cowboys, and shopkeepers, with a few women in the back, whispering behind gloved hands. "Starting bid is $35, the cost of her fare plus interest," the auctioneer continued. "20, called a red-faced man near the front. "Sir, the minimum is 35, the auctioneer corrected. 25 then, not a penny more for damaged goods." The man spat tobacco juice onto the ground. Victoria flinched at the insult, but kept her chin high, hands clasped tightly before her to hide their trembling. "I got 30, came another voice, belonging to a portly man with sweat stains darkening his shirt. Need someone to clean the saloon. 32! Shouted a thin man with a hard, calculating expression. For my wife's household. The bidding continued, each offer feeling like another nail in the coffin of Victoria's dignity. Then, just as the auctioneer was about to bring down his gavel at $40, a deep voice cut through the clamor. I'll pay the full amount, $50. The crowd parted, revealing a tall man in a well-worn duster and a cowboy hat pulled low over his eyes. He strode forward with the confidence of someone accustomed to hard country and harder choices. As he approached the platform, he lifted his face, and Victoria found herself looking into the most piercing blue eyes she had ever seen. Mr. Tucker Callahan, the sheriff acknowledged with a nod. Didn't expect to see you in town today. The cowboy Tucker kept his gaze fixed on Victoria. I was picking up supplies. His voice was like rough velvet, low and smooth with the hint of an edge. I'll take the lady's contract. You understand the terms? The auctioneer asked. Payment in full, and she works for you until the debt is settled. 6 months standard for this amount. Tucker reached into his pocket and withdrew a leather pouch. He counted out the bills and placed them in the auctioneer's hand. I understand. Victoria felt her breath catch. This man, this stranger, had just purchased 6 months of her life with the casual air of someone buying a sack of flour. Tucker stepped up onto the platform, and Victoria was struck by how he towered over her, a full head taller with shoulders broad enough to block the sun. But it was his expression that held her attention, not lecherous or cruel, but solemn, almost gentle. Miss Vaughn, he said, tipping his hat, I own the Broken Spoke Ranch, about 3 hours' ride from here. I need help around the place, cooking and such. It's hard work, but you'll be treated fairly. He paused, then added quietly, for her ears alone. And I'll cherish you, if you'll let me. Victoria stared at him, uncertain if she had heard him correctly. Before she could respond, he took her suitcase in one hand and offered her the other, helping her down from the platform. My wagon's this way, he said, guiding her through the dispersing crowd. Some onlookers cast curious glances their way, while others seemed disappointed at the outcome. As they reached a sturdy wagon loaded with supplies, Victoria finally found her voice. Mr. Callahan, I don't know how to thank you. Tucker helped her onto the wagon seat before climbing up beside her. No need for thanks. I saw someone in trouble, and I had the means to help. He flicked the reins, and the two dappled horses pulled forward. Besides, I've been meaning to hire help at the ranch. The timing seemed right. As they left the town behind, Victoria studied her rescuer from the corner of her eye. His profile was strong, a straight nose, firm jaw shadowed with stubble, and lips that seemed more accustomed to frowning than smiling. His hands on the reins were calloused and strong, telling the story of a life spent working outdoors. You're wondering if you've jumped from the frying pan into the fire, Tucker said after they had traveled in silence for some time. Victoria startled at his perceptiveness. Can you blame me? I don't know you, Mr. Callahan. Tucker, he corrected. And no, I don't blame you. He glanced at her, then back at the road. My ranch is about 15 miles from town. I run cattle mostly. Got about 100 head, some horses. It's a good spread, but lonely. He cleared his throat. I've got a proper house, 2 bedrooms. You'll have your privacy. Why did you do it? Victoria asked, needing to understand. Why help me? Tucker was quiet for so long that Victoria thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. My sister came west as a mail-order bride 5 years ago. Her intended died before she arrived. No one stepped up to help her. His knuckles whitened on the reins. She didn't make it. I swore if I ever saw someone in the same position, I wouldn't stand by. Victoria's heart constricted at the pain evident in his voice. I'm sorry about your sister. Tucker nodded, accepting her condolence without further comment. They continued in silence as the landscape rolled by vast expanses of golden prairie dotted with sagebrush, giving way to rocky outcroppings and distant mesas painted in shades of red and amber. It's beautiful, Victoria murmured, despite herself. It is, Tucker agreed. Harsh, but beautiful, like most worthwhile things. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Tucker guided the wagon onto a narrower trail. "Almost there," he said. "Just over that rise is the broken spoke." The ranch came into view as they crested a small hill, a sturdy log cabin with a wide porch, a large barn, and several corrals and outbuildings spread across a green valley nestled between protective bluffs. A small creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwood trees, whose leaves glittered like coins in the evening light. Tucker brought the wagon to a halt in front of the house. "Home," he said simply, jumping down and coming around to help Victoria descend. As her feet touched the ground, a large dog came bounding from behind the house, a shaggy brown beast that looked part wolf. Victoria instinctively stepped back, but Tucker laid a calming hand on her arm. "That's just Rusty. He looks fearsome, but he's gentle as a lamb once he knows you're a friend." The dog skidded to a stop before them, eyeing Victoria suspiciously before Tucker gave a short whistle. Immediately the dog sat, tongue lolling. "Give him your hand to sniff," Tucker instructed. "Let him get to know you." Tentatively, Victoria extended her hand. Rusty sniffed it thoroughly before giving her fingers a gentle lick, apparently satisfied with what he found. "See? Friends already," Tucker said, and Victoria was surprised to see a hint of a smile touch his lips. It transformed his face, softening the hard lines and crinkling the corners of his eyes. He led her to the house, carrying her suitcase and opening the door for her. Inside, the cabin was unexpectedly tidy for a bachelor's home. A large main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. Simple but sturdy furniture filled the space, a table with 4 chairs, a sofa covered in a colorful quilt, and a rocking chair near the hearth. 2 doors led off to what Victoria assumed were the bedrooms. "It's not fancy," Tucker said, watching her take it all in. "But it's solid, keeps out the cold in winter and stays cool enough in summer." "It's lovely," Victoria said, and meant it. After the uncertainty of the past 2 days, the cabin felt like a sanctuary. Tucker showed her to the smaller of the 2 bedrooms, a clean space with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a small window overlooking the creek. "This will be yours," he said. "I'll bring in water so you can wash up. You must be tired from traveling." Left alone, Victoria sank onto the bed, emotions finally catching up with her. She had come so close to disaster, only to be rescued by this quiet, serious cowboy with sad eyes and gentle hands. What kind of man pays a stranger's debt and promises to cherish her in the same breath? She wasn't naive enough to believe his intentions were entirely altruistic, but something in his demeanor, in the careful distance he maintained, suggested he meant what he said about respecting her privacy. A knock at the door roused her from her thoughts. Tucker entered with a basin of steaming water and clean towels, which he set on the dresser. "I'll start supper," he said. "Take your time." Victoria washed away the dust of travel, changed into a fresh dress, and ventured back to the main room. Tucker stood at the iron stove, stirring something in a large pot that filled the cabin with a savory aroma. "Can I help?" she asked. He glanced up, seeming surprised at the offer. "No need tonight, just stew and biscuits. Tomorrow you can take over the cooking, if you're willing." "Of course, that's why I'm here after all." Victoria hesitated, then added, "Mr. Callahan, Tucker, I want to be clear about my situation, about us." Tucker set down the spoon and turned to face her fully, giving her his complete attention. "Say what's on your mind, Miss Vaughn." "Victoria," she corrected, finding it only fair. "I understand that you've paid my debt, and I'm grateful. I'll work hard to repay you, but I need to know what you expect from me." Tucker's expression remained steady, though something flickered in his eyes. "I expect you to cook, clean, help with chores around the ranch the same as any housekeeper would do. Nothing more unless you choose it." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "What I said in town about cherishing you, that wasn't an expectation. It was a promise, should you ever want it." Victoria felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Why would you promise such a thing to a stranger?" Tucker looked away then, focusing on the stew once more. "Because I've been alone a long time, and I know what it's like to feel lost. 6 months is long enough to get to know someone, don't you think? Long enough to decide if you want to stay when your debt is paid." He stirred the pot with more force than necessary. "Or to leave, if that's what you choose." The honesty in his voice caught Victoria off guard. This man, this cowboy who had appeared like something out of a dime novel to rescue her, was offering her something precious choice. "I think that's fair," she said at last. Tucker nodded once, as if sealing a pact. "Supper's ready?" They ate at the table by lamplight, the stew simple but hearty, the biscuit surprisingly light for a bachelor's cooking. Conversation was sparse, but not uncomfortably so. Tucker asked about her journey west, and Victoria found herself telling him about Boston, about her parents' deaths and the creditors who had taken everything, leaving her with little choice but to answer the advertisement of a man seeking a bride in Arizona territory. "And now he's gone too," Victoria concluded. "It seems my luck has been poor of late." "Until today," Tucker said quietly. Victoria met his gaze across the table. "Yes, until today." After supper, Tucker showed her where everything was kept in the kitchen, explained the routine of the ranch, and outlined what he would need from her. It was all reasonable: breakfast before sunrise, dinner at noon, supper in the evening, cleaning, mending, and tending to a small vegetable garden behind the house. "I'll leave you to rest now," Tucker said as the evening grew late. "Morning comes early on a ranch." "Good night, Tucker," Victoria said, testing the feel of his name on her lips. He paused at his bedroom door, hat in hand. "Good night, Victoria." In the privacy of her room, Victoria unpacked her meager belongings, wondering at the strange turn her life had taken. She had come west expecting to be a wife, only to nearly become an indentured servant, and now she was something in between. A housekeeper with the possibility of more, if she chose it. Sleep came easier than she expected. The exhaustion of the past days catching up with her. She dreamed of blue eyes and strong hands, of a quiet voice promising to cherish her. The first rays of dawn were just breaking over the eastern bluffs when Victoria woke to the sound of movement in the main room. Dressing quickly in a serviceable brown dress, she emerged to find Tucker already dressed and building up the fire in the stove. "You're up early," he said, straightening. "I wanted to start as I mean to go on," Victoria replied, moving to take over at the stove. "What would you like for breakfast?" Tucker seemed momentarily taken aback by her decisiveness, but stepped aside. "Eggs and bacon, if you don't mind." "Coffee's already brewing." Victoria set to work, finding her way around the kitchen with growing confidence. Tucker sat at the table, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher, part curiosity, part something warmer. "You've cooked before," he observed as she deftly cracked eggs into a cast-iron skillet. "My mother taught me," Victoria said, a pang of grief still fresh despite the months since her mother's passing. She believed every woman should know how to run a household, regardless of her station. Wise woman. They ate breakfast in companionable silence, the early morning light streaming through the windows and painting golden patterns across the wooden floor. When they finished, Tucker rose and donned his hat. "I'll be checking the north pasture today. Might not be back till supper." Victoria nodded, already gathering the dishes. "I'll have a meal waiting?" Tucker hesitated at the door, looking back at her with an unreadable expression. "Thank you, Victoria." After he left, Victoria threw herself into her new responsibilities with determined energy. She cleaned the cabin thoroughly, discovering in the process that, while Tucker kept things tidy, there were corners that had clearly not seen a woman's touch in years. She found the garden behind the house in need of weeding and spent the hottest part of the day tending to it. Grateful for the wide-brimmed straw hat she found hanging on a peg by the back door. By mid-afternoon, her back ached and her hands were sore, but she felt a sense of accomplishment looking at the now-ordered garden with its neat rows of vegetables, tomatoes, beans, carrots, and potatoes. She had even discovered a small patch of herbs gone wild, which she carefully pruned and tended. As promised, she had supper ready when Tucker returned, dusty and tired from his day's work. He stopped short in the doorway, taking in the transformed cabin, the gleaming surfaces, the fresh wild flowers in a jar on the table, the aroma of roasted chicken and biscuits. "You've been busy," he said, removing his hat. Victoria couldn't help but smile at his obvious surprise. "I wanted to earn my keep." Tucker washed up outside at the pump, returning with damp hair and a clean shirt. At the table, he took his first bite of chicken and closed his eyes briefly in appreciation. "This is the best meal I've had in years," he said simply. Victoria felt a flush of pride at the compliment. I'm glad you like it. Tomorrow I thought I might bake bread, if that's all right. Tucker nodded. Whatever you want to do is fine by me. This is... He gestured to encompass the meal, the clean house. More than I expected. What did you expect? Victoria asked, genuinely curious. Tucker considered the question. I didn't really think beyond helping you out of that auction. I suppose I expected basic cooking and cleaning, not all this. I take pride in my work, Victoria said, and I owe you a debt beyond just money. Tucker's expression grew serious. You don't owe me anything beyond what we agreed. I don't want your gratitude. What do you want then? The question slipped out before Victoria could reconsider it. Tucker set down his fork and met her gaze directly. Honestly, company. Someone to talk to at the end of the day. The rest, he shrugged. The rest is up to you. The days fell into a pattern, each one similar but somehow fuller than the last. Victoria rose with the sun to prepare breakfast, then spent her days cleaning, cooking, mending, and tending to the garden. Tucker worked from dawn until dusk, managing his cattle, repairing fences, training horses, and handling the 1,000 tasks required to keep a ranch running. They came together at mealtimes, their conversations gradually lengthening as Victoria's curiosity about ranch life prompted questions, and Tucker's initial reticence gave way to a willingness to explain the workings of his world. She learned about the cattle business, about the challenges of ranching in this harsh but beautiful land, about the neighboring ranchers, some friends, some rivals. A week into her stay during supper, Tucker set down his fork and looked at her thoughtfully. Would you like to learn to ride? Victoria's surprise must have shown on her face, for he continued. It's just that you haven't left the ranch since you arrived. Thought you might like to see more of the place. I would love to, Victoria said, realizing as she spoke that it was true. She had watched Tucker ride out each morning with a touch of envy, curious about the world beyond the immediate surroundings of the cabin. The next morning, after breakfast, Tucker led her to the corral where several horses grazed. He whistled, and a gentle-looking chestnut mare lifted her head and ambled over. This is Penny, Tucker said, stroking the horse's nose. She's steady and kind, good for a beginner. He showed Victoria how to saddle and bridle the mare, his hands occasionally covering hers to demonstrate the proper technique. Each touch sent a small shiver through her, though she tried to focus on his instructions rather than the warmth of his skin against hers. Now, put your foot in the stirrup and swing up, Tucker instructed, standing close in case she needed assistance. Victoria gathered her skirts thankfully. She had worn a simpler dress today and did as he directed. Finding herself seated somewhat precariously on the mare's back, Tucker adjusted the stirrups for her height, his hands efficient but gentle as they brushed against her ankle. Hold the reins like this, he demonstrated. Gentle but firm. Penny knows what to do. You just need to guide her. For the next hour, Tucker led Victoria around the corral, teaching her the basics of riding. By the end, she was guiding Penny on her own, a sense of freedom and accomplishment filling her as the horse responded to her commands. You're a natural, Tucker said, and though his expression remained serious, Victoria detected a hint of pride in his voice. Can we go farther tomorrow? She asked, emboldened by her success. Tucker nodded. If you're not too sore. But the next day brought rain, a sudden powerful storm that kept them both indoors. Tucker busied himself with repairs to harnesses and tools, working at the table while Victoria kneaded dough for bread. Where did you learn ranching? Victoria asked, shaping the dough into loaves. Tucker looked up from the bridle he was mending. My father had a small spread in Texas. I grew up working cattle. His hands continued their skillful work as he spoke. When he died, I sold the place and came north with the money. Land was cheaper here then. Do you have other family besides... Victoria hesitated, remembering his sister's fate. Besides Hannah? No. She was my only sibling. Our mother died when I was 12. Tucker's voice held no self-pity, just a matter-of-fact acceptance of life's hardships. What about you? Victoria slid the bread pans into the oven before answering. I was an only child. My parents were older when they had me. It was something of a miracle, according to my mother. They were wonderful, but, she sighed, they didn't prepare for what would happen to me if they both passed. "How old are you, Victoria?" Tucker asked suddenly. 22, she answered. "And you?" 30 next birthday. He set aside the mended bridle. Old enough to know better, too young to stop hoping. Hoping for what? Tucker's gaze met hers across the table, steady and honest. For someone to share this life with. It's a good life, but a lonely one. Victoria felt her cheeks warm under his direct look. "Is that why you answered Mr. Arlington's advertisement? Loneliness?" "Partly," Victoria admitted, "but also necessity. After my parents died, there was nothing left for me in Boston." She brushed flour from her hands. "What about you? Have you never advertised for a bride?" Tucker shook his head. "Came close a few times, but after Hannah, I couldn't bring myself to do it. Seemed like tempting fate." The rain continued throughout the day, drumming on the roof and transforming the yard outside into a sea of mud. As evening fell, Tucker lit the lamps and stoked the fire, while Victoria prepared a simple supper of stew and freshly baked bread. They ate by firelight, the rain creating a cozy cocoon around the cabin. When Tucker rose to help with the dishes, something he had started doing, despite Victoria's insistence that it was her job, their hands brushed in the wash basin, neither pulled away immediately, the brief contact lingering like a question. Later, as Victoria prepared for bed, she found herself thinking about Tucker, about his quiet strength, his unexpected gentleness, the sadness that sometimes shadowed his eyes. In just over a week, he had become more than just her employer. He was becoming a friend, perhaps something more. The rain continued for 3 days, keeping them both largely confined to the cabin. By the time the sun reappeared, they had established a comfortable domesticity that surprised Victoria with its ease. They worked side by side on indoor tasks, their conversations growing deeper as they shared stories of their pasts. When they finally ventured out again, the ranch was transformed, everything greener, the creek running higher, wildflowers beginning to dot the meadows. Tucker kept his promise to teach Victoria to ride beyond the corral, taking her on progressively longer journeys around the property. One particularly fine afternoon, nearly 2 weeks after her arrival, Tucker suggested they ride to his favorite spot on the ranch. They packed a simple lunch, and Tucker led the way up a winding trail that climbed one of the bluffs overlooking the property. At the top, Victoria gasped at the vista spread before them. The ranch nestled in its valley, cattle grazing like toys in the distance, mountains rising blue and mysterious on the horizon. "It's magnificent," she breathed, sliding from Penny's back with Tucker's assistance. "This is why I stay," Tucker said, his hand lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "No matter how hard things get, I come up here and remember what I'm working for." They spread a blanket beneath a lone pine tree and shared their lunch, the conversation flowing easily between them. Victoria found herself laughing at Tucker's dry observations about his cattle, surprised by the humor that had begun to emerge as he grew more comfortable with her. "You should laugh more often," Tucker said, watching her with those intense blue eyes. "It suits you." Victoria felt herself blushing under his gaze. "I haven't had much cause for laughter lately." "No," Tucker agreed, "but maybe that's changing." The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Victoria was acutely aware of how close they sat, of the way the sunlight caught the golden highlights in Tucker's brown hair, of how his eyes seemed to see right through to her soul. Tucker broke the spell first, clearing his throat and gathering the remains of their lunch. "We should head back. I've got cattle to check before sundown." The ride back to the ranch was quieter, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Victoria found herself wondering what would have happened if Tucker had leaned in just a little closer, if she had been brave enough to bridge the gap between them. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant hues, Tucker finally spoke the question that had been hovering between them. "Are you happy here, Victoria?" She considered the question carefully before answering. "I am, more than I expected to be." "Good." Tucker nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "That's good." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the evening sounds of the ranch cattle lowing in the distance, the soft nickering of horses in the corral, Rusty's contented sigh as he lay at their feet. Victoria gathered her courage. "Tucker, may I ask you something?" He turned to face her, his expression open. "Anything." That day at the auction, when you said you would cherish me. What did you mean? Tucker's gaze didn't waver. I meant that if you chose to stay not because of debt or obligation, but because you wanted to, I would spend every day making sure you never regretted it, that I would value you, respect you, care for you. He paused, then added softly, love you, if you'd let me. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. You barely knew me. I knew enough, Tucker said simply. I knew you had courage, coming all this way on your own. I knew you had dignity, the way you held yourself on that platform. His voice grew softer. And I knew you were beautiful, inside and out. Victoria felt tears prick at her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her this way, with such honest admiration and respect. I don't expect anything, Tucker continued. The 6-month stand is agreed. When the time comes, if you want to go, I'll take you to town myself. And if I want to stay? Victoria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Tucker's eyes darkened with emotion. Then I would be the happiest man in the territory. The weeks passed with surprising speed, each day bringing Victoria and Tucker closer. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, gradually taking on more responsibilities beyond the house. Tucker taught her to collect eggs without disturbing the hens, to milk the cow he kept for household use, to recognize which plants in the wild were edible and which were best avoided. In turn, Victoria brought her own skills to the ranch. She planted flower seeds alongside the vegetables, bringing color to the yard. She took over the mending of Tucker's clothes, replacing crude bachelor stitching with neat, even seams. She decorated the cabin with simple touches curtains made from fabric. Tucker brought back from a trip to town a rag rug for the previously bare floor, wildflowers arranged in jars and bottles. Most evenings found them on the porch after supper, talking, or sometimes just sitting in companionable silence as the stars emerged in the vast western sky. Victoria came to cherish these quiet moments. When the day's work was done, and they could simply be together. One such evening, as a particularly spectacular sunset blazed across the horizon, Tucker reached over and tentatively took her hand. It was the first deliberate touch he had initiated that wasn't related to helping her with chores or riding, and Victoria felt her heart quicken at the contact. His hand was rough with calluses, but warm and gentle as it enveloped hers. "Victoria," he said, his voice low and serious. "You've been here a month now." "Yes," she agreed, wondering where this was leading. Tucker's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. "I find myself hoping the next 5 months pass both quickly and slowly." At her questioning look, he continued. "Slowly, so I can enjoy every day with you. Quickly, so you can make your choice without the debt hanging over you." Victoria turned to face him fully. "Tucker, I don't feel indebted to you. Not anymore. You've given me work, yes, but also a home, safety, respect." She took a deep breath. "Perhaps even friendship?" "Friendship," Tucker repeated, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Is that what you feel for me, Victoria?" The direct question caught her off guard, but Victoria was tired of dancing around the truth. "No," she admitted, "not only friendship." Tucker's eyes darkened and his hand tightened on hers. "What then?" "Something more," Victoria whispered. "Something I've never felt before." Tucker raised his free hand to gently brush a strand of hair from her face, his touch feather light. "May I kiss you, Victoria?" She nodded, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he must hear it. Tucker leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When his lips finally met hers, the contact was soft and questioning at first, then more certain as she responded. It was Victoria's first kiss, and nothing like she had imagined. Tucker's lips were warm and surprisingly gentle, his hand coming up to cradle her cheek as if she were made of porcelain. When they finally parted, she felt breathless and exhilarated. "I've wanted to do that since the day we rode to the bluff," Tucker admitted, his voice husky. "Why didn't you?" "Because I needed you to be sure, to know that it was your choice." Not gratitude or obligation. Victoria reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "It is my choice, my heart's choice." Tucker captured her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm, a gesture so tender it brought tears to her eyes. "We should still wait," he said, though his expression suggested it was the last thing he wanted. "Until the 6 months are up. Until you're truly free to decide." Victoria wanted to protest, to tell him she had already decided, but she recognized the honor in his restraint. Tucker was giving her the time and space to be absolutely certain, protecting her even from the possibility of regret. "Very well," she agreed. "But that doesn't mean we can't—" She left the sentence unfinished, color rising to her cheeks. Tucker's smile deepened. "No, it doesn't mean we can't." And he leaned in to kiss her again, more confidently this time. From that evening on, their relationship shifted subtly. Tucker was still respectful of her privacy and personal space, but he no longer hesitated to take her hand as they walked, to brush a lock of hair from her face, to place a gentle kiss on her forehead when they parted for the night. Each small touch was a promise, a bridge being built between them. Their conversations grew deeper as well. Tucker began to share his dreams for the ranch, the improvements he wanted to make, the legacy he hoped to build. Victoria found herself included in these visions of the future, not as an afterthought, but as an essential part of the plan. "The north pasture could support more cattle if we dug a well there," Tucker explained one evening as they sat at the table, a crude map of the ranch spread before them. "And I've been thinking about adding sheep." "Sheep?" Victoria asked, surprised. Most cattle ranchers she had heard about disdained sheep herding. Tucker nodded. "Wool fetches a good price, and they can graze on land that's too rocky for cattle." He glanced at her. "What do you think?" The simple question and the fact that he genuinely wanted her opinion warmed Victoria through. "I think it's sensible to diversify," she said. "And I could learn to spin and weave. My mother taught me the basics." Tucker's expression brightened. "You'd be willing to try that?" "Of course," Victoria said. "If I'm to be a rancher's wife, I should contribute to the enterprise in every way I can." The words slipped out before she realized what she was saying. Tucker went very still, his eyes fixed on her face. "Victoria," he said carefully, "is that what you want? To be a rancher's wife? To be my wife?" Victoria knew she should be more circumspect, should at least pretend to need more time to consider, but the truth was too strong to deny. "Yes," she said simply. "It is what I want." Tucker reached across the table and took both her hands in his. "Are you certain? Life out here is hard. Winters are brutal. Summers are scorching. There are droughts and blizzards and 1,000 ways for things to go wrong. And you face them all with courage and determination," Victoria replied. "How could I not want to stand beside such a man?" Tucker's expression softened with an emotion Victoria was coming to recognize as love. "I don't want to hold you to anything yet," he said. "We still have time." "Time for what?" Victoria asked, squeezing his hands. "Time for me to fall more deeply in love with you, because that happens every day, without my even trying." Tucker's breath caught audibly. "You love me?" Victoria nodded, suddenly shy despite her bold words. "I do. I think I began to love you that first day when you said you would cherish me. No one had ever promised me that before." Tucker rose from his chair and came around the table, pulling Victoria to her feet and into his arms. "I meant it," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I will cherish you every day of my life, if you'll let me." He kissed her then, with more passion than before, his arms holding her close, as if he feared she might disappear. Victoria responded in kind, her heart soaring with the knowledge that this good, honorable man loved her as deeply as she loved him. When they finally parted, both breathless, Tucker rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered, "not because of any debt or agreement. Marry me because we choose each other." "Yes," Victoria answered without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you, Tucker Callahan." The next day, Tucker rode into town, returning with a simple gold band that had belonged to his mother. He slipped it onto Victoria's finger that evening, sealing their engagement with a kiss that promised a lifetime of tomorrows. They agreed to wait 2 months before marrying, enough time to be certain, Tucker insisted, though Victoria privately thought she had never been more certain of anything in her life. The engagement changed nothing and everything. They still worked side by side, still maintained separate bedrooms, still respected the boundaries of propriety. But now there was a new lightness to their interactions, a joy that infused even the most mundane tasks with meaning. Word of their engagement spread quickly among the scattered neighbors, bringing visitors to the ranch curious to meet the Eastern woman who had captured the heart of the reserved Tucker Callahan. Victoria found herself welcomed with a warmth that surprised her. These hardy frontier women offered friendship, advice, and practical gifts to help her establish her new home. Mrs. Miller, the sheriff's wife, rode out with a quilt she had pieced herself. "Every bride needs a wedding quilt," she said, presenting the colorful creation to Victoria, "especially out here, where winters get so cold." Martha Jensen, whose husband ran the neighboring ranch, brought preserves and canned vegetables. "To tide you over until your garden comes in proper," she explained. "And Tucker tells me you're planning to add sheep. My father raised them back east. I'd be happy to share what I know." Even the town's dressmaker, Sophia Green, made the journey to take Victoria's measurements for a wedding dress. "Every bride deserves something special," she insisted when Victoria protested the expense. "Besides, we so rarely get to make anything but practical clothes out here. Let me create something beautiful for you." As their wedding day approached, Victoria found herself increasingly grateful for the community that was embracing them. These people, with their practical kindness and frontier directness, were becoming her people, her friends. The isolation she had feared upon arriving in the West was giving way to a different kind of connection, one based on mutual support and shared challenges rather than the artificial social niceties of Boston society. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching a spectacular lightning display on the distant horizon, Tucker took her hand and pressed something into it. Victoria opened her palm to find a small brass key. "What's this?" she asked. "Key to the strongbox," Tucker said, "where I keep the ranch accounts and papers." He met her gaze steadily. "I want you to know everything about our finances, our legal standing, no secrets between us." Victoria was touched by the trust this represented. "Thank you." Tucker nodded. "My father never let my mother know about such things. When he died, she was lost, had no idea what we owned or owed." His jaw tightened at the memory. "I won't do that to you. Is that why you taught Hannah about ranching? So she wouldn't be helpless if something happened to her husband?" Tucker looked surprised. "Yes, exactly. How did you know?" Victoria smiled gently. "Because you've been teaching me the same way. How to ride, how to recognize good grazing land, how to judge a horse's health." Tucker was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I suppose I have. Never thought of it that way." "It's one of the things I love about you," Victoria said. "You don't just want a wife to cook and clean. You want a partner." "That's exactly what I want," Tucker agreed, drawing her closer. "A partner, a friend, a lover." His voice dropped on the last word, sending a shiver through Victoria, despite the warm evening. Their wedding day dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect June morning that seemed like a blessing from above. Victoria dressed with trembling hands in the wedding gown. Sophia had created a simple but elegant creation of ivory satin with lace at the collar and cuffs. Martha Jensen helped her arrange her hair, weaving wildflowers into the honey-colored strands. "You look beautiful," she said, stepping back to admire her work. Tucker won't know what hit him. The ceremony was held on the ranch, under an arch of branches that Tucker had constructed and Victoria had decorated with flowers. Nearly 30 people gathered to witness their vows, neighboring ranchers and their families, townspeople who had come to know and respect them, even Sheriff Miller and his wife. Pastor Thomas from the town church officiated, his weathered face beaming as he spoke of the sacred covenant of marriage. But it was the personal vows Tucker and Victoria had written that brought tears to the eyes of even the most stoic ranchers present. "Victoria," Tucker began, his deep voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "When I first saw you standing on that auction platform, I knew you were something special. Your courage, your dignity in the face of adversity, touched something in my heart that I thought had died with Hannah. You've brought light back into my life, purpose beyond just surviving. I vow to protect you, to respect you, to cherish you all the days of my life, to build a home and a legacy with you, to face whatever comes our way together, with hope and determination." Victoria blinked back tears as she responded. "Tucker, you saved me when I was lost and alone, but more than that, You gave me choice when others would have given only commands. You saw my worth when I had begun to doubt it myself. I vow to stand beside you through all the seasons of our life together, to work with you to build our dreams, to love you faithfully and completely. I will be your partner, your comfort, your home, as you have become mine." When Pastor Thomas pronounced them husband and wife, Tucker's kiss was both tender and possessive, a promise of the life they would share. The cheer that went up from their gathered friends echoed across the valley, startling a flock of birds into flight. The celebration that followed was simple but joyous, a feast laid out on tables under the cottonwood trees, music provided by a fiddler from town, dancing that continued well into the evening. Victoria found herself passed from partner to partner as the neighboring men claimed their dance with the bride, each offering congratulations and words of welcome to the community. But it was the quiet moment at the end of the night, when the last guest had departed and they stood alone on the porch of their home, that Victoria would remember most clearly. Tucker looked at her in the moonlight, his expression one of wonder and love. "Mrs. Callahan," he said softly, testing the sound of her new name. "Mr. Callahan," she replied with a smile. Tucker swept her into his arms, crossing the threshold of their home, as tradition dictated. "Welcome home, wife," he murmured against her hair. "I've been home since the day you brought me here," Victoria whispered back. "I just didn't know it yet." Their life together settled into a rhythm that suited them both, days filled with work and purpose, evenings with conversation and closeness, nights with a passion that still surprised Victoria with its intensity. Tucker was a gentle, considerate lover who delighted in her pleasure as much as his own, teaching her that physical love could be as beautiful and meaningful as the emotional bond they shared. As summer gave way to fall, they worked side by side to prepare the ranch for winter. Tucker expanded the vegetable cellar to hold the bounty from Victoria's garden, while she preserved and canned everything they couldn't eat fresh. They added 10 sheep to their stock, and Victoria began learning the arts of shearing, carding, and spinning from Martha Jensen, whose expertise proved invaluable. Their first Christmas as husband and wife was marked by a blizzard that kept them snowbound for 3 days. Far from being a hardship, Victoria found it a blessing uninterrupted time with Tucker. Cozily ensconced in their cabin, while the wind howled outside, they exchanged simple gifts: a new saddle blanket she had woven for him, a delicate silver locket he had ordered from back east for her. "Open it," Tucker urged, watching as she examined the locket. Inside, she found a tiny portrait of Tucker on one side, the space on the other empty. "For our first child, when the time comes," Tucker explained, his voice husky with emotion. "A reminder that they are born of love." Victoria's eyes filled with tears as she closed the locket and pressed it to her heart. "It's perfect," she whispered. When spring arrived, bringing new calves and lambs to the ranch, Victoria confirmed what she had begun to suspect. She was with child. Tucker's reaction to the news was everything she could have hoped for: joy, wonder, and a protective tenderness that manifested in his insistence that she rest more and let him take on additional chores. "I'm pregnant, not ill," Victoria protested one afternoon when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry. Tucker's worried expression made her soften. "I know, but I can't help worrying. My mother lost 3 babies before Hannah was born." Understanding dawned. "Is that why you've been hovering like a mother hen?" Victoria asked gently. Tucker looked sheepish. "I just want you both safe." Victoria took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are safe. I'm strong, Tucker. And this baby has 2 stubborn parents. He or she will be fine." Her pregnancy progressed smoothly, despite Tucker's worries. By summer, her condition was obvious. Her dresses let out to accommodate her growing belly. The neighboring women visited more frequently, bringing advice, hand-me-down baby clothes, and offers of help when her time came. On a crisp October morning, with the aspen trees blazing gold on the hillsides, Victoria went into labor. Tucker rode at breakneck speed to fetch Martha Jensen and the town's midwife, returning with both women just as Victoria's pains were intensifying. The labor was long and difficult, testing Victoria's strength and Tucker's nerves. He paced outside the bedroom door, driven to distraction by her cries of pain, until Martha finally took pity on him and allowed him to sit by his wife's side, holding her hand through the worst of it. As dawn broke the next day, their daughter was born a robust baby with a shock of dark hair and her father's blue eyes. When the midwife placed the swaddled infant in Tucker's arms, he stared down at her with an expression of such awe and love that Victoria felt her heart might burst. "She's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny fist as it waved in the air. Like her mother. Victoria reached for them both, and Tucker carefully settled beside her on the bed. Their daughter nestled between them. "What shall we name her?" she asked. Tucker thought for a moment. "Hannah," he suggested softly. "After my sister. She would have loved to see this day." Victoria nodded, tears of joy and exhaustion mingling. "Hannah Victoria Callahan, our miracle." Tucker leaned down to kiss his wife's forehead, then his daughter's. "The first of many blessings," he promised. The years that followed proved him right. The Broken Spoke Ranch prospered under their joint stewardship, expanding as they added more cattle and doubled their flock of sheep. Victoria's wool became known for its quality throughout the territory, and she eventually hired 2 local women to help with the carding and spinning as demand grew. Hannah was joined by a brother, James Tucker, 2 years later, and then by twins, Elizabeth and Samuel, 3 years after that. Their home expanded along with their family, Tucker adding rooms to the original cabin until it became a proper ranch house, with a separate room for each child, and even a dedicated space for Victoria's woolworking. Through it all, they remained partners in every sense, facing droughts, harsh winters, and occasional conflicts with less scrupulous neighbors with the same united front they brought to raising their children and building their business. Their love deepened with each challenge overcome, each joy shared, each quiet moment stolen amid the busy days. On the 10th anniversary of the day Tucker had paid Victoria's fare at the auction, they rode together to the bluff that had become their special place. The ranch spread out below them, larger and more prosperous than it had been when Victoria first saw it, but still the same beloved home. "Do you ever regret it?" Tucker asked, his arm around her waist as they stood taking in the view. Though his hair now showed touches of silver at the temples, he was still as strong and vital as the day they met. "Coming west? Marrying a rough cowboy instead of the gentleman you were promised?" Victoria turned in his arms, looking up at the face she had loved for a decade. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a single moment." Tucker's smile was slow and sweet, the smile she had coaxed from him over the years, replacing the solemn expression he had worn when they first met. "I'm glad," he said simply, "because I meant what I said that day. I have cherished you, Victoria, every day." "And I have cherished you," she replied, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "My cowboy, my rescuer, my love." As they rode back down to the ranch, where their children waited with the celebration dinner they had planned in secret, Victoria reflected on the strange and wonderful journey that had brought her here. From desperate mail order, bride to beloved wife, mother, and respected rancher, a transformation she could never have imagined that day she stood trembling on the auction platform. Tucker had done more than pay her fare that day. He had given her a choice, a chance, a promise, and together they had built a life more precious than gold, more enduring than the mountains that watched over their valley, more beautiful than any dream she could have conjured. The debt had been paid long ago. But the love was a gift that renewed itself with each sunrise, each challenge faced together, each quiet moment shared. It was, Victoria thought, as they approached the house where laughter and light spilled from the windows, the greatest treasure of the West, and it was theirs, now and always.